I don't have a specific artistic background because I studied medicine at university. I never actually practiced as a doctor, but my interests have always been, in a way, in the field of psychology and of group dynamics also. Psychological first, of course, and then later they became more oriented towards aesthetics. I've been working as an artist for many years now, and I would say that because of the fact that I have no specific background, specific preparation in the field of art, in the techniques, in the methods also, no, of the artistic practice, I have been often explored territories that are more hybrid, more on the border between art and other disciplines and other fields and other, in general, ideas. And the other thing, so experimenting is a way for me of not having a very specific and defined profession, something that is already in a way fixed around a set of techniques or methodologies, on one hand. On the other hand, not having a specificity, a specific preparation, for me has always been, or has often been compensated by collaboration with other people. So if there's something that I am not able to do because of technical limitations, of lack of preparation, of knowledge, then to me it has always been quite normal to have others collaborating and try to work together, so with others. So this means that I have tried to explore very often different borders between art and different disciplines. Not only psychology, but also maybe law or biology, or different knowledges and sciences too. So I think that this is one of the reasons why I have often worked in group situations. No? So the interest for psychology, the lack of specific preparation for art, and also the interest of working with other people with different knowledge, different competencies. And I've always enjoyed working in groups with others. So when I started, I, of course, was very young, and I was, in a way, following an older artist, Sergio Lombardo. But also at that time, it was not just a one-to-one relation between a master and a student, but rather was a group that he created, that we created, that more or less were, rotating around his figure and his attitude, of a master, older artists with younger artists. But we were already at that time a group. Then, of course, I've been part of groups where we were all more or less at the same age and at the same level. And then later on, when you get older, you become sometimes the leader or the person to whom the others refer to, or the organizer or the curators. So this means that, in fact, parallel to my artistic activity, meaning making shows, etc., I've always worked with organization of situation, exhibition sometimes, but often also just situation where artists could meet, could gather and work together, or even just meet and know each other. So this, for example, had several moments. One crucial moment was 20 years ago, when together with other friends we started a sort of an open residency program that was called Oreste, and we also tried, because that was the beginning of the internet and of the email. So 97 is the year when everybody, really literally everybody, had their own email account, although there were already some, but was generalized exactly in the passage between the second half of 1997 was the moment when really everybody started having their own email account. And because of that, the opportunity to, let's say, spread information towards friends or people that you know even not well, increased dramatically, in few months. And that was for us a very important instrument, a very important tool for organizing this kind of meetings and residencies. So Oreste was a very complex set of people, an open group basically, and the different kind of events that were organized. But mostly the idea was to set up conditions where artists curators could meet and live together for a certain amount of time. So trying not just to meet for an opening or for a conference, but to really share the life in common, the eating, having fun, studying, and showing each other's work, etc., etc., etc. This possibility of working with an horizontal model, where the leader, so the teacher, for example, with a group of students, is not so much the person who directs the others toward a certain direction that he or she knows in advance, but is rather the person who hosts, so who offer space in his or her mind to the ideas, for the ideas of the others. So basically you are recognized by the other participants as the leader, so to say, if the group, or most of the elements of the people of the group, feel that their ideas are represented in your mind. If you think about them, if you listen to what they say, if you consider, the possibility, the potentiality that those ideas, those proposals can offer, can open. So this is my approach. So the idea that with a group of younger artists or students, you can make proposals, suggestions, ideas, dreams, utopias, whatever, circulate. And as my vision of myself as a teacher is like someone who can, yes, give hospitality to others' ideas and at the same time give them back, possibly in a more circulatory way, so that you help the idea to become more comprehensible, more shareable. You can share more with the other, more usable by the group. So I think this circulation to me can create some very interesting conditions where the mind of the group, let's say the collective mind, becomes a sort of a unity, becomes somehow a group's mind. Two years ago, for a series of circumstances, we had the possibility of actually buying this place. We saw this house, and we were fascinated by the idea of having a house, basically, for this collective, and to open this house to all the friends, artists, also at an international level who wanted to make this experiment with us. And the experiment is basically to bring that idea of working in a workshop model, so in a horizontal circulatory way, in a specific place. So to consider that you add to that model also the specificity, the peculiarity, the characteristics, either architectonically and also the characteristics of the land, of the place, of the plants, of the smell, in the same workshop model. So I insist on this idea that what makes this special, I mean, of course it's small and it's an endeavor with no money, so it's something that has to be completely self-organized. But what makes it different from a normal academic setting is the fact that here the content of what you study has to be connected with the place where you do it and with the community that is created in the moments, in the week, in the month, or whatever, where this thing happens. So so we try to make the two levels always interfere, always cross with each other, and make the two things become one. So, for example, if we are here, let's say, making, like we did, for example, last year, a seminar on the relation between the idea of common and the idea of sensibility.
Pasta is ready.
We're coming. We try not only to make a discussion about it, but also to make this discussion cross with our experience of the smell, of the sound of the birds, of the heat or the colors, and so on and so forth. So this is the attempt that we're doing in this casa. So this casa is, we try to make it become an element that inevitably, makes our bodies connect with our mind, our sensibility connect with our signification, with our knowledge, try to make this connect, and try to connect each other. Because if we share a sensible aspect of our experience, then we probably can make our minds work together better. And so the idea is to creating this mind-body, place, content. In Italian there is the word senso. The word senso means either signification, meaning, and also sensibility. Sense and meaning, it's the same word. So we try to make sense this way. Yeah, it is a concept and it is a method. It is a structure, in fact. It's the possibility of gathering forces and ideas without being, in a way, under an umbrella of an existing institution. Not because I have something ideologically against institutions, but as a preconcept, but because I think that it's better if you leave possibilities open, more open, or as open as possible. And sometimes institutions, such as, for example, museums, or existing schools, often, they have certain rules and certain, borders that you can't go beyond. They're a little bit stuck within a certain structure. So I think that the self-organization is that situation that creates the conditions for which different people with different competencies, different ideas, and different approaches, can get together and arrive to ideas for projects or for art in general or for specific works that cannot be reduced to the singular idea, to the idea of the single ones, participants of a group. So it's something that inevitably becomes a sort of a surplus of value that is created by the encounter and the multiplication of these resources, competencies, ideas, etc. So self-organization is that thing that allows the thing to happen. Simply that. Free initiative has been monopolized, has been colonized by the market-oriented economy. And it's of course it's a lie, basically, because in the market economy there's not much that is free, or at least what is free. So the competition is in a way much less important than the political, economical force of monopoly, of corporation, of big groups that really regulate the how things work in the market, and this advertising, corporations, etc. So there is not much freedom in a way in the free market, in the so-called free market situation. So I think that this, as I was saying earlier, it started in the 80s. It started a shift. Something changed in the mentality, and the idea of freedom and of initiative have been associated with business, and necessarily with the idea of the economic success of an initiative. And I think that has nothing to do, not necessarily have to do with the self-organizing that a group of people can do to create a community, create a workshop, create a laboratory, an experiment of self-education, and so on and so forth. So I think we have to reappropriate, in a way, the concept of freedom and the concept of initiative and organization, and actually empty them by this colonization of the idea of market and economical, financial, even more than economical, it's financial success. So I think that yes, the field of education, the so-called field of education, shouldn't be mixed, with this idea of the entrepreneurship, with all these new words like startup, like I don't know. There are several terms in this area, and they're always oriented towards making money. Like if you don't make money, it's necessarily a failure. So this is it's a different story that we have to. It's a different story that we have, a different narrative that we have to create, to construct together, and it's a narrative that has to do with the fact that knowledge and relations and way of getting meaning from life is something that is more, it's not necessarily different or opposite to make money, but it's something else, and probably is much more important. So an initiative is successful if it creates condition for exchange of meaning first. Then, okay, if it's self-sustainable in terms of economics, of course, it's important, but the main importance is the possibility that there is an exchange of meaning, there is an exchange of relations and of knowledge between people. To me, has much more to do with exchange, with the idea of exchange. And even exchange is a word that has been colonized by economy, by market economy. But exchange is the essential mechanism that keep organisms alive. So organisms are alive, A, because they reproduce themselves, and B, because they exchange. They exchange material, they exchange humans, exchange language, so they exchange ideas, they exchange the meaning that I was mentioning earlier. So to me, education or formation or school, no, la skole, the Greek, the old Greek idea of getting together to discuss and become better person. There is the idea of the Epicurean skole, the Aristotelian peripatetikos, all the Greek school, no, of philosophy. They were school of experience. They had something similar to what I was mentioning earlier about the importance of the place, together with the importance of what you discuss and study in the place. Anyway, to me, education is this opportunity for exchanging knowledge, ideas, and as I was saying, also sensibility, the access to sensibility. This, for example, is something that is crucial, and it's probably not so considered because, of course, most of the academic and institutional education goes towards abstract knowledge, no? And the body is left a little bit behind. But the body is an extremely important way of getting knowledge. Sensibility, as I was saying, sensibility. So I am very interested in this idea that Jacques Rancière has proposed, the idea of la partition du sensible, so that to share or to part sensibility. It's an interesting political idea that before the partition of the means of production and the partition of richness and of money, there is another partition that would make us more equal. That is the partition of the sensible, of what we can feel, what we can get from our environment, no? Starting from the most basic, that is the smell, the sound, and the colors, and getting up to get the deep meanings from a medieval fresco in a church in Galatina, nearby here. So it's a whole scale of sensibility to one can have access, and our life is enriched and become better and better the more we. So sensibility can be parted, can be shared, and it's not like money that if you get more, there's always someone who gets less. Sensibility is something can be multiplied by sharing, so everybody becomes more rich, right? So this to me is a good, let's say, idea of education. In Italian, it's quite clear in the word ricerca, that this has to do somehow with the idea of circulate. Ricercare means to look around, so to look in a circle somehow. And that, apart from the circular model of knowledge that I was mentioning before, it's interesting to me the difference between if you consider a point where, let's say, is, for example, the object of your desire, no, it's a point. Now you can approach this object of desire trying to go straight to catch it, no, and appropriate. So that you create, or you try to create a line. On the other hand, you can also consider that this object of desire, instead of being catched, can create a force that produce movement. So, for example, the gravity, a body that is somehow far away from a bigger body that creates a gravity, instead of collapsing on it, would start circulating around it, creating a circle around. Now, of course, if you circle around the object of your desire, you will be never fully satisfied somehow. No, you don't get it. But first of all, your, let's say, movement will be much more complex and will last a lot of time. Otherwise, if you just get it, it's over, it's finished. But if you circulate around it, you have a lot of different possibilities, and the most important thing is that you will look at this central point from the most different point of view. So you won't have a unique vision, and a unique form to your desire, but you will have all the possibilities, all the different possibilities, and this will keep you alive, basically. So to me, the idea of circulating, circolare, cercare comes from circle, cerchio, it's exactly the same word. Cercare or ricercare means to go over and over. Ricercare means to do it again and again and again and again. And without in a way renouncing to the idea that we will solve the problem. The problem, there's not a solution. Probably the solution is death, maybe, I don't know, when this movement ends. But this movement, gives you the possibility of so many different approaches with different points of view. And it's like if you become, in a way, you become a little different each time. Each different angle, you are a little different than the moment before and after. Well, I was thinking exactly the fact that the concept of network is relatively recent, so it comes after the internet, basically, from the mid-90s onwards, has interfered with the concept of friendship, in fact. And I think it has changed in a way, so the practice, the reality of friendship, in the sense, I think that in general we have more people in our address books or in our address, email, whatever, book, but we actually have less intense relations with someone. So we meet more people, but for let's say shorter time or with long intervals. So friendship has become a more diffuse, dispersed thing. And I'm not saying that this is negative. I think it's as negative as positive. There are some very interesting aspects. Probably without the internet and the network kind of connection, we wouldn't be here talking today. On the other hand, for sure, there is some other relations that got lost. Well, for me, the network is basically, as a general idea, probably is just the total number, the totality of the people of whom I have an email address, and then there are more specific networks that are related to some project or some period of your life. So it's a way of moving, from one initiative, one situation to another, and try to also adapt oneself to a different configuration. And I think this is okay. I mean, I believe in a mobile identity, not in a fixed identity. So I think that it's completely normal that an artist is part of a certain group for a while and then becomes part of different groups, and there are people who maybe are, or you meet again people that you haven't met for a while with a new project. So I think that I would say that probably the most interesting aspect of this concept of the network and of the fact that you inevitably belong to different kinds of networks is interesting because it creates the necessity for you to make adaptation, so to change some parts of your identity again in different moments. No, I've never used the word client. It reminds me of a Latin. It's actually a Latin word. Clientes were the people who had some common interest towards a certain person or a certain initiative, and so not exactly friends, but rather people who were got together by some specific interest. Today you would say lobbyists, probably. No, I never even thought about the idea that there could exist a client for an artist. It makes me laugh, actually, to think of a client for an artist. Instead, the collaborators is very important, because collaborare means to work together, and collaborator to me is, I was saying before, is the fact that since I don't believe in the specialization, or better, I never managed to specialize in something, right? To me, collaboration is essential because I need others' knowledges, others' competencies. And collaborate to me means to, take these competencies by other professionals to develop, in order to develop some projects that I couldn't do on my own. And it's interesting, the collaboration with an artist for a biologist or for a lawyer. I think it's interesting to collaborate with an artist for them because they bring their methods at the limit where they normally don't go. So they still use their competence and the knowledge, but in a field, in a way, with methods that they normally don't practice. So they, go a little beyond their fence. And I think that this might be very interesting for everyone else than the artist. The artist, to me, is the one who promotes collaboration and brings professionals to work at limits of their own usual methods. Maybe I use the word visitors of a show, or recipients of a certain message through the emails. But the audience, because audience is related to a certain numbers that in a way get interest to something instead of something else, like in TV programs. I think that I've been used from where I was very young to consider that when I was doing an artwork, that was mostly addressed to a certain number, very few, 5 or 10 approximately, people that I knew personally, on a personal level. So that is, let's say, the first audience for me has always been, at least in my mind, the certain number of people that know me very well and that I know quite well, and that I know that they can have, let's say, a very open and complex at the same time evaluation, no, of what I do. And still it's still in my mind this kind of model for which a certain number of friends, so to say, are the one that I have in mind, that I do the work for somehow. But at the same time, I must say that becoming older, or anyway having more opportunity to make exhibitions, and maybe traveling, and maybe even participating for exhibition where I even don't go, for example, I start thinking, I start constructing in my mind a more abstract idea of public. But it's still very sort of, I can't catch it. I can't really figure a public, an audience, if I don't personally know, them. It's maybe what's happening now, especially for example with YouTube, is that I realize that, or with websites, I realize that there are a certain number, let's say maybe a few hundreds or a couple of thousand people who get to know you from all over the world, and that you've never heard of, and that you would never. So that for me is now it's taking form in a way, this non-community, this community of people that are not together. But I maybe I have this as an audience in mind. So the potential public of this interview, if it goes online, there might be a potential public. But although I don't know personally them, I think I have in my imaginary this as a possible audience. Yes. Great privilege of this life, of having the possibility of being an artist, and live one's life as an artist, is exactly this: to work, to make a work, to make a life of this research of freedom. And this is an incredible privilege, and it's really, I'm not saying it's easy, but I think it's a very nice privilege.